just give it a shot. If you fail, well, you're part of the millions of startups that fail. You're in good company.
Hey friends, this is Podcast Ruined by a Software Engineer. I'm Perry Tiu. On this episode I get to talk to Fisayo Oluwadiya, founder of Resactly, an intelligent app foodies could use to share their taste profiles and receive unique dining experiences. If you enjoy Podcast Ruined by a Software Engineer, don't forget to hit the follow button on your podcast app so you don't miss out on the new episodes. And you can pick up podcast merch at perrytiu.com/shop. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back to another episode of Podcast Ruined by a Software Engineer. I'm your host, Perry, and today with me is Fisayo Oluwadiya, founder of OKAO and creator of Resactly. Fisayo, how are you today?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thank you for that. Just because what we're going to get ourselves into today, in terms of a lot of your background, is so relevant because, of course, you're an engineer just like I am and just like a lot of people are at the end, and we get to talk about a bit of techie stuff, but also the project that you're working on, Resactly. It's so intriguing, it's so fun, and it's something that everybody can relate. Food, dining experiences, all that kind of fun stuff. So I just want to say welcome and thank you again for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. It should be great.
But one thing first, though, maybe I know I can't do justice to this, sorry, but who is Fisayo and what is Resactly?
Okay, well, Fisayo is a founder of OKAO. So OKAO is my company, and I provide software solutions for the food industry. The primary product is Resactly. So Resactly, when I first started out, was just going to be a cool fun until my first step into being an entrepreneur for recommending restaurants and dishes to people when they're trying to decide where to go out to eat. But as I built it and launched it and exposed it to other people, it's grown into something and asks that have been made that it's way more than that. Aside from just choosing where people are going to eat, it's going to be working as a dietary tool. So, for instance, things that take into consideration people's allergies, their dietary preferences. Further still to that, it's also expanded further into a platform for analytical tools for restaurants. There are a lot of feature functionality that's provided to them to be able to make smarter decisions about their menus, which will hopefully translate, as technology always does, to bettering that ecosystem of keeping restaurants open. So that's just a very high level 2 or 3 lines of what Resactly is. But ultimately, that's just who I am, an engineer at heart. I finally jumped into being a startup founder after 18 years in the industry working for people. So yeah, that's me.
I can't highlight that enough. I can't highlight the fact that every single engineer out there, maybe at some point they'll be like, I want to start my own thing. And of course, having you as an example of a doer, right? Of a person who does stuff and do it. That's why I'm absolutely excited to get into all of that. And one thing that you already alluded that is quite cool, at least on my end, is when we talk about age of technology, age of information, age of, having more data, basically, when you're talking about like even the dietary restrictions, for example, like there must be some APIs that come through that has more and more information that tells you like this restaurant maybe has that like, catering to people that needs it. So, oh man, I can't wait to dive into Resactly in just a second. But one thing that I actually also want to highlight is the build and launching part. You did this in terms of you really own the construction, the foundation, a lot of like the idea behind it. So I keep on saying that we're not born that way. Nobody born the second being able to build applications. Maybe some people are, but I'll speak for myself. I'm not. So maybe in terms of some of the influences and how you are able to do all of that today, I think something that might help us out is maybe a bit of, I guess, your background in terms of where did you grow up, or where would you consider home, I guess? Because I know like people have a lot of influences back then, whether it's technological or not, and it brings us a long way in life. So maybe in terms of my curiosity is, where is home? Where are you from originally?
Okay, well, I am originally from Nigeria. I was born and raised there. I came to the United States when I was 16, I believe. No, I was 15. I turned 16 a year after, a couple weeks after I came in. But born and raised in Nigeria, I didn't actually get my hands on a computer until I was leaving Nigeria, until 16 years old. But my immediate my immediate obsession with email, even though it was spam email, definitely piqued my interest as to what is this thing. But that's that. For the most part, my love and my passion for food comes from basically what my background and my tradition is. So I am a Nigerian woman, and it's kind of basically a requirement that you know how to cook and clean, but I don't really do the cleaning part well. But you need to know how to cook, and that I always held on to because I actually absolutely love and I'm obsessed with food. And this passion for food is something that has followed me throughout my life. When I hit principal engineer maybe about 6 or 7 years ago for the first time at MLB, I was like, okay, at that time, principal was the highest. I was like, okay, I'm a principal now, and I am 33 years old. Now what? So I obviously going to keep on going between companies being a principal, but I also want to have other achievements than just hop, skip, and jump for the rest of my life. So that's when I was like, okay, what else can I do? And at that point in time is when I first started dining out on my own, and going to these high-end restaurants and enjoying the tasting menus. And these things were like 3-4 hours long, and I'm eating by myself. So it's like, okay, how do I entertain myself? Then I first started taking photos, then notes, then I started writing. So I was like, okay, I'm a food writer now because this actually is a career, right? And then fast forward 7 years, I have about 50,000 readers a year on that. And it was basically my love and my passion between food writing, recommendation, and AI, trying to get on the AI trend that led to the idea of Resactly and building it out.
That food passion really drove you far and even further from that point. And tell me a person that can't live without food for a day. I can't name you one of them at the end. And also the epicenter. I believe you're based in New York at the moment, so food, it's no business comparing anything in terms of the food scene to that. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of crazy good places, but I think one thing that you were saying in terms of the dining, the high-end experience, and even your blog itself, I believe nycfoodieadventures.com, I believe that's the website itself. I could definitely relate to some of the fun stories of the places that you've been so far. This is the part where, of course, it's a tech podcast. Perry geeks out on this, but first computer. This is always the part where I get to ask, what was it? In a sense, was it a Mac? Was it a Windows? Was it, I guess, like pieced together by somebody you didn't even know and you just happened to stumble upon it? Like, nowadays, computers gave us so much power to everything, but do you remember anything from back then? What was that machine?
I mean, it was a Windows, and it was one of those big, ugly white ones. And I think it was a leftover from my father's office that kept on breaking down, so he brought it to the house. And it still wasn't working, and I don't know what happened, but for shits and giggles, I took it all apart. I was like, ooh, that looks cool, and I put it back together. And it came on, and it worked for like a day, and then it fell apart again. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then there turned out to be what do they call these things? Computer centers or something like that. You know, I don't know if they still exist today. You pay for an hour of time to use the computer, and they're one opened right maybe like a 20-minute walk from our house. It opened right as I was leaving, so I'd go in there and I signed up for email, and I'd browse the internet, and I'd get really excited when I had email, like, who knows me? All sorts of very interesting, fun things. But yeah, that was, what was it? Was it Windows 95? I don't even recall anymore.
If it was 95, if that was your first OS, that was my first OS as well. Just saying. The 95, I feel like it grabbed a lot of people when that happened. And my goodness, computer centers, that's such a great, like internet cafes, probably like the predecessors of internet cafes where it's like a couple of, I don't know, dollars an hour or something like that. Nowadays there are still internet cafes, but way more sophisticated, of course, with like the latest like graphics card and rows of like fancy chairs and all that. But it's so good that you got exposed to that. Do you remember any of, because the thing is, like, of course you do coding today, like you live inside of a computer and more, of course, outside of it. But in terms of, do you remember, I guess, like influences, whether it's like a book that you picked up and you're able to learn coding from that, or was there somebody around you already during that time that is already familiar with a computer? even back in those days, like how did that connection happen between you and I guess wanting and liking coding? Of course there's emails, but were you like looking at the HTML of like the email itself, or was like, I don't know exactly, the discoveries that you ran into?
No, that love and that passion didn't come until actually when I was in college. I was just curious about what it was when I first came upon it, like, okay, this is weird. But when I got to college, I was still very focused on I'm going to become a stockbroker because, like you're a child, you want to copy what your parents are doing. And my dad at the time, he owned a bank and was a stockbroker. So I was like, I want to do that. It was DePaul University. So take a science course. I hated biology, so I wasn't going to do that. I was like, I don't know what chemistry is. I'm not even going to try. Computer science, hey, I'm curious about computers. Let's give that a shot. So I took one class. I can't remember what it definitely wasn't Java. I think it was C++. I think it was do a hello world of C++. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. And that drove me crazy. And I'm like, I cannot believe this inanimate object is going to win because I am a very competitive person. How is an inanimate object going to beat me? And then I finally figured it out and it was like, yatta! Ha! I win! And that love and that passion and that excitement drove me for, okay, what's the next assignment? And it was that same rush of I'm gonna beat this thing, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna beat this thing, and then it's like more projects and more excitements and more programming languages and more complex things, and it's just always been that way.
Oh my goodness, you kind of just shared one of the feelings that a lot of people in tech, like I guess like the first time they wrote a for loop, or for me the first time we dragged and dropped an HTML file into the browser and you actually visually see things like that those are the moments where we very much savor and be like, wait, it works. You can write code and does things, but of course, your initial C++, maybe in Java, like there's a lot of stuff in there, like the mallocs and the allocs that drive so many people crazy. So I kind of see why it probably marked you way more than you think it did.
Now I was trying to remember, what is it, address allocation? Like you allocate some memory, you use it, and then you have to deallocate it, because if you don't deallocate it, then your application is screwed.
Yeah, the garbage collection doesn't kick in, or nobody knows where the memory goes, and it's like, oh, look. But if you do know how to use it correctly, that's why a lot of, I guess, like high-performance programs do it. Anyways, didn't want to dive into that part, but one thing that was really cool that you mentioned, though, in terms of like this exposure to coding and everything, is that I know some people would be like, oh, as a kid, like I read this book about like for loops, and then like I feel like that's common, but not that common. I didn't really write any for loops until maybe like grade 9, where there's one prof that on the side was like, we'll do some like HTML, and then it's like, here's some JavaScript. It's like, oh, that works too. But then big break, go into university. I did comp sci as well. So I believe like you also got the same-ish, I guess, program. Maybe it's a good opportunity to ask you, like, what exactly was that direction of the computer science program? I keep on saying this because nowadays everybody that does like comp sci, it's like, here's a section on machine learning, here's a section on like OS, there's a section on that. But I guess back then it wasn't that defined, right? It was mostly algorithms, I'm assuming, maybe a bit of database, maybe a bit of like OS, I would say. What exactly you would define that program at DePaul, I believe you mentioned?
Yeah, it was algorithms, database. It wasn't like PostgreSQL and all of these other, and Oracle and whatnot. I forget. It was one of the Microsoft databases.
SQL Server.
Yeah. Was it SQL Server? There was another one before it. Was it Access or something? Before SQL Server? Yeah, I think that's what we were using at that point in time. So there was that. There was a little bit of hardware. There was graphic design. It was C++ we used throughout. It was only my senior year that we got a taste of Java, a little introduction of Java, but it was for like just one class, and that was it. But there wasn't anything that I recollect or that I remember that I actually ever used on the job, because even the Java they taught me, it was like, what is this? It turned out like that's the most popular language that everybody knows, and that's what I based my entire 18-year career on. I'm a Java expert, but I was never taught it. I taught myself.
how funny is that? To be completely honest, I feel like a lot of people who did comps at the end, you realize that you don't really learn it, I guess, just for the syntax and like the languages. That's not the goal of those programs. The goal is like, fine, understand your architectures, understand your algorithms, understand like your NP problems. You're really into that kind of stuff to be able to solve it at the end. But Java, we got introduced. My program at McGill University was very much Java heavy. We got introduced to Eclipse, and everybody just hates Eclipse. That's the part where like, why would you try to get a group of people excited about something and you show them Eclipse? Like, it's like one of the biggest turn. Anyways, I feel like I'm already going on a tangent about ranting about languages and all that, but one thing that could be more interesting than talking about Eclipse, capstone projects or any kind of like more significant projects during that time that kind of made you, I guess, like coding even more. Maybe some examples, at least on my end, is I remember our capstone was very much game heavy because Montreal game industry very, very tight. So we use Unity and C# to build some like strategy game where you get to like generate tiles. That was cool. I'm not in the gaming industry at the moment, so I don't really do any of that, but it was cool in the sense of, hey, you get to see that as part of your education. So I don't know if there was anything that jumped up like that or jumped out.
No, I do not recall anything that was exciting as far as a project that I built in college that I remember that was exciting. I really don't.
Well, good thing that, after that, 18 years after that, you've probably touched way more interesting projects, if anything, on it, so...
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what really solidified I'm on the right track was after I graduated, and I got a job as a contractor in Atlanta. My first contract was with a company doing contracts for the government. I forget exactly what that product was, but it was so cool to see all of these different things put together and to see the live applications of it to things that I was actually building and coding. That just really solidified, okay, I get this. And of course it was in Java and JavaScript, which were two programming languages I really loved. So I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. Now I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, putting theory into practice. I think like anybody, once you realize that, hey, you could actually solve real life problems with it, that's when the part of like, oh, I work in healthcare, but in tech, and then you have to do a lot of cool stuff behind that. So what is it? So you ended up doing your undergrad and you worked immediately after, or how did that work out at the end in terms of, I guess, your first official full-time role, or did you do more studying after?
No, after my undergrad, I got a job in Atlanta for my OPT. I'm an immigrant. So we have the 1 year grace period to work, at which point someone can file your paperwork for you. You can get your H-1B visa, or you have to go back to school to maintain your legal presence in the United States. So I said I want to take a break after 4 years in Indiana winters. I want to go somewhere warm. I want to try something new. So I wasn't even thinking about grad school at the time, but got the only place that would give me a job was a consulting company. So pretty much what it is they hire new grads. They make you offers and they give you housing and they teach you the different programming languages, and then you interview for contracts. You go on the job, and hopefully everything works out. If that doesn't work out, you're put on bench and you learn some more until you get another contract, and the cycle continues. And the promise is over the course of the year, you'll get your paperwork filed. And poor little me didn't happen. My paperwork was not filed, so I had to go back. To grad school. But hey, it was great. I obviously wouldn't repeat it.
Yeah, this visa talk. I'm Canadian at the end of the day, so of course when we talk about working in the United States, it's always very, very interesting on every front on that. But I feel like every company has like a Slack channel of just like visa talk. I don't know if you do. I don't know if anybody does, but that'd be such a funny thing to relate to for all the immigrants out there in the United States.
I don't know if companies have the visa channel. I mean, would that be PC? Will legal allow them to have a visa channel?
Maybe I'm just not too open about it. I'm like, oh, this is how many lotteries I've been through. Fortunately, I've only been through one lottery, and I was fortunate with that. But also when people talk about like the TN and the Canadian stuff, so there's a little bit of like leeway for that. I know people from like, I don't know, Singapore that gets like H1B pretty easily. Like it's all these fun talk that like if you're non-American working in America, you go through it, right? People go through the O1, for example, where it's like extraordinary, and it's like, how the hell did you do that? What paperwork did you file? And people find every single way doing it. So but once you make it, you make it. I keep on saying that's always a celebration moment on all that. For the grad degree, was there a specialty? I feel like sometimes people be like, oh, like my grad was in computer science and all that, but there's a I guess like a theme behind it where it's like it's more focused on distributed systems or something like that. So do you recall anything like that?
No, my grad was on software engineering in particular, because I went to George Mason. They did have a comp sci master's, but then they were like, the software engineering program is for working professionals, and the classes are at night, and it's really teaching you hands-on skills that you actually need to become a core software engineer in the real world. So that for me, that's what I thought. That's what I need. It's like, I understand comp sci, I have that. I've done the bachelor's. I know it was completely useless to me. I actually want to learn what I need. I'm going to follow and take their promise at heart, what I need to actually be successful in the job. And in all fairness to them, they did teach things that made me successful in the job. The problem is I already learned everything. By working, so it was kind of like, great, so now I just spent another 2 years in school for skill sets that I already had.
You got the paper at the end.
I got the paper at the end.
That's so good though. Funny enough, now that you mentioned that the clarification is like software engineering, I actually have to specify this to people because my degree is computer science, major in software engineering. And then, like, it sounds repetitive at this point, right? Where it's like, and then I don't know if it's not a trick question. I'm gonna ask you this, but I'm also gonna try to answer it myself. But like, sometimes people will be like, "What's the difference? Like, why do you have to say computer science, major in software engineering?" That's at least on my case. So I don't know if you have an answer to that.
Honestly, no. I do not have an answer to that. Major in software engineering, computer science. I do not have an answer to that. I mean, well, I guess computer science can also be maybe theoretical. I don't know if there's anybody who actually uses, like, the algorithms that we learn in bachelor's and whatever it is they teach in master's towards some sort of academia. So maybe that's where a difference is. But for me, as a person who went the practical, hands-on, technical coding path, I don't see the point.
That is a way more intelligent answer that I've been saying after all these years. For me, it was mostly like, I also always get that computer science wasn't specifically about like, here's how an existing software is built. It's more about like understanding the science part. Here's some like traveling salesman problem. Here's different ways of like implementing it and understanding why people decide on one way more than the other. So that's a lot of science behind it. People love reading papers and a lot of linear and all that kind of fun stuff. So that's how I've been kind of seeing it. Software engineering, take a popular app, dissect it, do everything you want to it, and understand that. That's some of the courses I remember I did for software engineering. So great answer on both ends. I feel like that's something that helps people clarify on that. But eventually though, first full-time, I guess, like software engineering role where you just wore the hat, like full-time permanent. Do you remember that in terms of where it was when it happened? Because I guess from that moment, of course, you grew into a principal engineer, which is always an accolade at the end. But where did that seedling begin?
I think I'll say that was first full-time, like, yeah, this is a full-time job, and it felt like a full-time job and an engineer. That would be when I first moved to New York. I got a job with Citigroup, but it was within a small group within Citigroup called Yieldbook. So they like to say we are a startup culture within a large organization, and to a certain extent, they very much were when I first joined. When I was leaving, they retired a lot of the leaders, and with that move, I didn't like the new leadership that was coming in, so like, time to go. But that was my first job. My key product there was called LCA. It's a loan collateral analysis platform. So for that, my manager wrote a script that was querying I think it was querying a Sybase database. I forget what script he wrote, but it was querying that. It was pretty much like a makeshift API, writing a script that was querying a Sybase database, and then I was reading the responses that Sybase database that script was writing, and I was building a graphical user interface. I forget what visualization tool we were using at the time, but it was one of the earliest UI frameworks. This was before anybody had heard of Ember, React, all of that. It was very, very bare bones basics, like you could do pie charts. But basically, by having that was my first application that I'm like, yeah, I built a software system and people were using it. It still exists. They've been trying to retire it for years, I hear. But too many people complain every time they try to take it down, like, where is it? So it still exists. It's there at Citigroup. So I built that. And then the last project I did there before I left, it was a WebSphere portal. So pretty much the problem was they said they didn't have enough software engineers to do a whole lot of this kind of build out that I've done, the custom build out that I've done. So they wanted to pull in WebSphere portal, which was basically the shining promise that all you have to do is set this up, it's drag and drop, and you'll have all your visualizations, your dashboards, and everything. What IBM didn't tell us is, well, all of those little tiles and things you drag and drop a visualization, somebody actually has to build it. So you can't have software engineers just coming and pointing and clicking. They actually need to build it. So I spent a good 6 months trying to get this thing together, and it was painful, even though we had specialists, we had IBM specialists, but IBM specialists will come in, they're familiar with like version 7, we're working on version 8, which is a complete rewrite, so they don't have the skill set. I'm having to read the code, decompile code. It was a nightmare. But it came up, it was deployed, and then senior management said, no, this is too expensive and too complicated since it's not solving the problem. Yeah, I'm out.
Sounds like finance to me. Sounds like finance technology to me. I feel like the stories you just shared are so great. Even when you were mentioning like what languages you're talking about, like, yeah, forget about all the React, Vue, Angular, like none of that back then. Like basically bare bone vanilla JavaScript at that point. If you're lucky, maybe a bit of jQuery. I feel like that's probably like where some of that come up during that time. But one thing I do want to highlight is the projects that you just mentioned. It seems very much full stack. It seems like, because I know like a lot of people that comes out of university or even just like programs that are meant to be catered to have a career in software engineering, is that like you're kind of shoveled into one more than the other. But that exposure, working so closely with the people around you of like, okay, yeah, give me this script, give me this endpoint, give me this response, I'll send it back. I need to understand even from the back end how that actually works. That is, I keep on telling people, you don't get to choose that often.
Yeah, definitely not. And the thing is, being full stack came from my year working in Atlanta, because it's like they teach you everything. They teach you front and back end, because they're just like sending your overbloated resume to everybody. And obviously if they put you as full stack on that resume, you get more people looking at the resume and they're curious. So that's what they taught me. That's where I got the taste of these things. And then obviously like working on those contracts, I got fired a bunch of times, but because I didn't actually have that hands-on experience. But getting that taste and getting that understanding, that allowed me to be full stack. In college, it wasn't really any thought of front end versus back end versus any of that. It was just like skills. But then hitting Yieldbook, that's where I was partnering with my manager, and at least for that LCA, we were doing the full stack. After Yieldbook is when I went to JP Morgan, And at JP Morgan, they tried to pigeonhole me to just front end when I first started out. Because they put me on this application that was a financial analytical tool for treasurers of organizations. So you had large organizations. Basically, they use this application to manage their cash positions, make payments. So pretty much, if this platform wasn't working, people aren't getting paid. So I was on the front core portal. So I was responsible for the dashboard, the first thing they see when they come onto the platform, as well as the integration of all of the other dashboards that are owned by other teams. So I was responsible for all of that. And what was coming in was, what I was first put on was basically bug fixer. We're getting in something like 50 bugs per day. All of them come to me first. And I have to now look through and debug and say, okay, this is the issue, and it goes to this team, or it's something for us. So pretty much all day, every day I was doing that, and I started getting really frustrated seeing bug for this team, bug for this team, bug for this team. I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous, and I'm very pissed off. I'm tired of doing this. So I'm like, okay, we have a decompiler, and we know how to read code. I read all of the code decompiled, and I rebuilt that entire thing on my own. And then I went to my manager, hey, look, let's launch this. This is working. We do not need buggy systems from old teams. And then they ran it through a whole lot of manual testing through the QA and had a little itty bitty problem of not telling the other teams. So I got a lot of hate and vitriol thrown my way. But the platform was up, and after it going up, there was like one bug in 6 months. So with that, I had the full rewrite of the front end. I had very deep technical understanding of all of the back-end systems, not only ours, but also all of the other teams. So that really gave me love and passion. And also it was a full rewrite on new tech, because initially it was written on like JSPs and struts, and there was a little jQuery in there somewhere. So this was just like full wipe everything out. And it was just simple JavaScript with servlets 2.0 on the back end, no struts, very straight to the point. And then after that, Ember came out. Two things happened. One, Jamie Dimon was like, he set down a mandate. This was when ADA just became a thing and companies were getting sued about ADA. That's the Americans with Disabilities Act, where every person with a disability should have the same access and to information and be able to use platforms that are online as people without disabilities. So it became a law. Companies were getting sued because they weren't following the law. So JB Diamond was like, all of our public-facing applications, they have to be ADA compliant. So I got that wonderful task because, hey, Fisayo likes ripping things apart and building them from scratch, so this shouldn't be a problem for her. So they said, you're going to make not only the portal front end, you're going to make that ADA compliant, and you're also going to do it for all the other teams, whether you're going... So I was like, okay, wait. So you want me to make mine ADA compliant, then go to another team, make it ADA compliant, then go to another team. I was like, this makes no sense. I'm going to be rinsing and repeating over and over again. Let's pick a framework. And I will build basically like building blocks that other teams that are ADA compliant individually, and other teams can basically just take those little building blocks and build their application. Basically, I was building an ADA compliant material UI using Ember.js. That's essentially what my solution was. And it worked. So built that and used it for our platform, proved it worked, ADA compliance, everything is there. We actually had to work directly with the Ember team a little bit, because as Ember was basically built for one application, it wasn't basically built for large organizations. as far as rendering, because when you're rendering JavaScript that much, it keeps on rendering everything into one large file, and then the download was taking forever. Versus when we actually built, I think they were called engines, it would only load the engines when the request is actually made, basically async. So it's all of these things I came up with the beginning of, oh wow, this is magic. I was there at the beginning before, now it's automatic and everybody does that.
I don't even know how to unravel all of this. Like, even being like a core contributor, it made directly to like a framework like that. If they haven't thanked you yet, like they probably should, in the sense of every framework needs the usage, because how are they gonna test a real hard life stress test, right? Like a real life stress test, and you were like, yeah, if you actually use this at scale, it doesn't work. So I feel like you can't have improvements unless we have people like you using that and making it. So that's a really cool story over there. And the other part of when you're saying like building stuff that other people could use, whether it's for compliance issue, like the concept of reusable components. Like, we say this in any engineering teams out there, and I love this conversation so far because like I've done a lot of front end engineering as well. So everything you've mentioned, I'm like yes, and yes. But the reusable components part is like, that is absolutely like, I guess, a concept that every team needs, because why are people building the button every single time? Like, why is everybody implementing a button every single time when you could, not only on the design side, but also, as you were saying, the accessibility. People will say A11Y, I believe that's like the short term for it nowadays.
Yeah.
One of my biggest concrete example, if I can share a story on my end about accessibility real quickly, is I was working in health tech more than anything, and I've always had this habit of, when you use an image tag in HTML, put your alts in there. Of course, you have your SRC, which is your source, but please include your alt, because that's part of helping people able to read on their text read and everything. So me, as a habit, like, I've heard it once very early in my career, and I've been doing it since. And then we end up getting customer feedbacks. This one customer was like, when I was using your application, everything just worked great with my reader application. And that message was just like blasted all across. And it was something, it seemed unintentional, but nowadays it's just something that, like, thanks to the app, of course, but even every time you see people being affected by it, I'm so glad that we're having this conversation about not only just ADA, but also, yes, you could write code that actually helps everyone have the same experience. So thanks for that story. I have really enjoyed that. Before I get into the part of how to, I guess, sort of become a engineer all the way up to like principal engineer, I want to take a second to talk about, I guess, maybe design systems and like, I guess, like traditional finance companies, in a sense of like, is it fully unified, question mark, in a sense of, is there a color palette you could pull from? Because I feel like I don't have that many guests that I could talk front end stuff that much into. But how did that work back then? Do you remember if there was like a full guideline where it's like, oh, here's a color palette, here's if you want any animations, they're there, here's a loader screen, here's that? Or was it more like every team gets to decide what, I guess, like front end framework or front end components or anything that you get to use?
So when I first joined and I was on that application first, the cash management portfolio application, absolutely no design system. It was just whatever was there there before. There was blue. Great, wonderful. Let's copy and paste blue. But when it came to the rewrite of, or the building of the UI framework, I was paired with a design team. Because design teams, when you're talking about ADA and accessibility, they have to be very involved, because you need to think about contrast ratios, you need to think about font sizes. It's ADA is tied very tightly to design. So there was a design team that was tied to the effort as far as building the components. So off of that, we're building components. Off of that, that's where your design guidelines came from. So it wasn't like every other team is having to think about, okay, what fonts can we use, what color schemes can we use, so on and so forth. No, you didn't have to do that. You just basically used the component library, and all of that style guide was built into the components. But that was with the build out of the framework. Prior to that, no, absolutely nothing. It's just
gotcha. Yeah, I could relate so much to it. And okay, this is the last question on the design side, is nowadays people have the luxury of using Figma, and even earlier on it's like Sketch, right? Like Sketch kind of died in that competition, if anything. But do you remember back then, how were you able to get designs from other teams? I guess like just, I guess, Photoshop files. At least from my experience way back then, it was like they would just send like a Photoshop or something and you would just implement that.
I honestly don't remember right now. I swear by Figma right now. There was the one right before Figma that I was using. But no, I think it might just have been Excel spreadsheets now that I think about it. Yeah, I think it was Excel spreadsheets.
Down memory lane, if anything, right? Like, there was a world where we didn't have Figma, and there was a world where somebody would send you an image and you have to guess the pixels. I'm very much a pixel perfect kind of person. I remember, like, trying to find the exact pixels between all of it. But anyways, I could go so much deeper into that, but before we jump into Resactly, of course, I wanna mention this part of the evolution, right? You've done so many projects, not only just at JP Morgan and even Citi, like even after that, MLB, I believe, Nordstrom for a little bit. Like, these are good corporate, good in the sense of like challenging, right? They have challenging tech products and everything in it. But I just want to dive real quickly in the evolution of Fisayo in terms of like, you know, different responsibilities and different, I guess, titles at that point. So maybe from my understanding, at least in tech, you know, software engineer, some people have junior software engineer, senior software engineer, then you get to staff engineering, then principal. Some places nowadays have the fellow, where you kind of just a little bit more, I don't know if it's glorified, it's like a scholar. I don't know exactly the whole context, but
yeah, there's a whole there are a whole bunch of new ones. There's senior principal, there's fellow, there's distinguished. I was like, okay, whatever.
Exactly. But even from your take, which is why it's a luxury to have you on the show, if anything, to talk about this, is what was the I was going to say physical difference, but what was the moments where you either knew or you didn't know when you went from one to the other? I feel like that's probably the way I would ask it in terms of like, was it day and night? Was it like overnight where you're just like, today I'm a senior software engineer, like tomorrow I'm this kind of thing? Like, what, from your perspective, basically, that journey, how would you describe that?
I mean, since I pretty much was the one that pushed myself into higher roles, even though I didn't have the title, I mean, they hired me as a bug fixer on a cash management platform and I rebuilt the entire thing. So basically I took myself from a junior to a senior in the span of a year without being assigned any task to do it. I just did it. In corporate, it's not like you have senior engineer and all, well, now they do, but I went from associate to VP. Those were the title shifts, right? So pretty much, I don't feel like someone said, now you are a senior engineer. Now you are what do they call it? The mid-level engineer. Nobody said that. I just basically said, that's a project that's challenging. I like it. I'm going to take it and I'm going to do it. So that pretty much just always, so even when I now get the title afterwards, it's like, okay, what are the requirements of this role? The same thing you've always been doing. Oh, okay, cool. The only time I felt like, okay, now I'm at a higher level is when I went to MLB and I became a principal. Because when you're a principal, you're doing every single thing. So that very first thing you said at the beginning, which is you're kind of pigeonholed into whether you're front end or you're back end. Even though I refused to let myself be pigeonholed, people try, I said no. At MLB, that's when it's like, okay, no, you're doing everything. You're working with business, you're working in finance, you're working with legal, you're working with infrastructure, you're working with QA, you're doing everything. You are responsible for everything. Other people have their jobs and they're doing their roles, but sink or swim, you're responsible for it. So when I hit principal and I saw that level of responsibility, that's when I felt like, yes, I'm in a new level. I'm where I want to be. I have full ownership, which I actually asked for during the interview. This is where I want to be. This is a higher level. Yes, I'm at a high level.
I really appreciate that perspective of that answer, mostly because one of the keyword I'm going to highlight the most is afterwards. I feel like you've said a lot of good keywords, but the word afterwards is you were saying you were already doing this stuff regardless of the title. And that's one of the perspectives I keep on emphasizing, is that you do not chase titles. Like, you do not do that. The point is you chase responsibilities. If you are that kind of person, you chase responsibilities, you chase cool projects, you get thrown cool projects, and the work that you do is something that shouldn't be strange to you when something regarding your title changes. Like, that is never something that is a shocking moment. It's something that's like, the best way you've put it, oh, I'm doing this already. Like, that's probably the best way of looking at it. So I feel like that was such a good advice for anybody, is sure, you can be a title chaser, but for people that, just like you are, or have experienced that kind of level, it wasn't ever the reason for doing a lot of that. So thank you so much for that. It's super, super cool. But you did a lot of that, and eventually, of course, we're going to get into Resactly. It's more like that didn't happen overnight, right? It didn't happen overnight where it's like, oh, I'm going to have this whole thing. So maybe if you could share us the seedling, or maybe like the beginning of, working as, of course, a principal software engineer, a full-time role and everything. How did that connect with your great project of Resactly today, basically? If people wanted to hear, I guess, like the story behind Resactly more than anything.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I did MLB. I really didn't want to leave MLB, but there were a couple of reasons, and a big one was that Nordstrom came knocking at my door. It was, I was going to have a female manager, the first one in my entire career, and she was actually really technical. It wasn't, I'm a female manager in tech. She's like, no, I wasn't hardware. I was a coder. I just went management. So, and I could have technical speak. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. This should be fun. And also the level of principal at Nordstrom being such a larger organization, it was a very structured organization. Being a principal is a really high level thing. You're setting direction, you're setting strategy, vision for the company, driving direction. It was a very big and important thing. And I just said, okay, this, while it's still principal title, it's principal at a higher level. I want to do it, and I want to make the run over there. At the end of Nordstrom, I made a little hop, skip, and jump for a couple of months to another company that shall not be named. Because, yeah, that was an experience that I don't want to repeat, and I don't want anybody to know who they are. But at the same time that was happening, OpenAI had just launched. And OpenAI received massive success, even more than the owners themselves knew. They were like, we're surprised we received this kind of positivity. And then obviously at the same time, it was like, AI. And I'm like, okay, everybody's doing AI. This guy didn't even realize it was going to be this successful. Yes, he put in work, but he was like, I didn't realize it was going to be this successful. Why don't I try this? Like, it's about time. I have my citizenship now. Nothing is holding me back. I'm not tied to a company. Just give it a shot. If you fail, well, you're part of the millions of startups that fail. You're in good company. It's okay. So then, with that, I said, okay, what product do I do? What do I build? And I started digging through my brain. I've been out of finance for a while. It's like, okay, let's try to go back to finance because that's where you seem to make the most money as a startup, picking something from what the large banks and making it fintechy and more efficient. Let's go into there, look at that space, pick out an idea and build something. And I was trying to build basically credit card payment processing, credit card payments without paying a fee. So when you're going through like PayPal or all of those other peer-to-peer payments, you want to pay via credit card, you have to pay a percentage. I was trying to eliminate that. I was trying to build a platform that eliminates that. And I was building it, but I was finding I'm not really committed. I'm not really passionate about this. So I stopped. Then I was like, okay, well, I'm officially done with finance, clearly, if I can't commit to a product in this industry. Let's try another serious industry that I don't really know much about. Maybe that will pique my interest because, once again, it's new, it's different, it's challenging. So let's go into medicine. And with medicine, I was looking at, unfortunately, the truth of the matter is mental disease is something that is still very experimental. It's like, oh, you have that, try this, try that, try this, try that. Does it work? No? Okay, let's try something else. Let's check the dosage. So I was trying to build something that removes that guesswork out of the equation. And I built it and it was working. I was like, this actually really will have a lot of impact because I'm pulling in AI, I'm pulling in data to be able to make this work. I was like, this actually will work, but I don't see myself committing the rest of my life to this. Even though it's an impactful product and I know it'll make a difference, what's the point if I'm going to quit on it a year later? So I'm not going to continue building this. Then I was like, okay, I'm at the point where it's food writer success. principal engineer, success. What can I do that is a combination of these two things that I both love, that I'm both obsessed with? What can I build with these two things? That's why I started digging into it. Okay, so as a food writer, I recommend restaurants and I recommend dishes. So I am a recommendation engine. Cool. How about I build that and I pull AI into that? So, recommendation engine, well, that's basically Netflix. Okay, so how do I recommend restaurants? What are the things I do? Okay, I'm doing research on the chef. I'm doing research on the cuisine. I'm doing research on the food preparation. I'm doing research on cooking backgrounds of all of the chefs. Basically, there's a lot of detail and input that goes into play before I even set foot in the restaurant. So it's like, okay, that right there, that's a platform to build. And then I'm looking at it, I was like, wait, hold on. I can use this for myself, because right now when I'm visiting restaurants, it's like, try this, try that. This blog said this blog said that. And I'm going to all these different places. Sometimes, more times than not, I don't like it. And I'm spending money at all of these places. Why don't I just build this tool for myself and see if it works? So that effectively is what it is how it started. I'm building this tool for myself to find restaurants that I'm going to go out and review and write about. So pretty much I kept on building it that way. Okay, what about, I'm at this restaurant now. What about it do I like? Oh, the atmosphere I don't like. Or, okay, I don't like the atmosphere. Am I going to get up and leave? Yes. Okay, that's not part of the algorithm. Likes atmosphere. No, don't even stay here. So I'm building that for myself, and I'm pulling in all these attributes every time I go out. So let's just say market analysis, or is that market analysis that you'd call that? Requirements gathering. That's the word, not market analysis. So me basically going out to eat, that was requirements gathering. And then, so not only building the model based off of my experience, then I start sitting at bars and I'm having conversations with people. Having those conversations with people and expanding my products more and more. So pretty much as I just keep on having my real life experiences dining, I'm able to build out what my model is, and I get an attribute, I get the data, I retrain the model. All of this is deployed on GCP, which was a fun experience, figuring out AI. The funny story there is they give you like there was this long learning document of everything you need to know about machine learning, like quick fall, everything you need to know about like machine learning. I read this thing, went through all of the practice sessions, took me about 2 weeks, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. And then they're like, now use Vertex AI. You go into Vertex AI, you don't have to use any of that. You literally just have to like load data, click a button, and then it gives you your model. I'm like, so why did you just make me read through all of that for 2 whole weeks? It was good. I learned a lot. And when I got my model, I was like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but why in the hell didn't you just tell me, click, and you're done? So, but in any case, learned that, got it together, got the first model, which was really janky and really bad. But then I started to learn more about like feature generation and feature extraction and being more thorough about my algorithm. Like my algorithm, as I mentioned before, it started with like just 4 different features that were direct. You really could have just made it 4 if-else statements and you're done. But then by pulling in more data and actually reading through the data and pulling in visualization tools and saying, oh, okay, if that's that correlation, maybe I should extract that feature and actually add it to the model. And it's just basically grown. The algorithm has grown that way. But yeah, that entire part of building the model was very exciting to me, and learning more about AI and training models. And then at the same time, bringing in my love and passion of, I'm just going out to eat. That's fun, but I'm also working, So.
Wow. I think I say wow in the context of people think that models come out of the box already like pre-made with like everything, all the data populated and everything. And I mean, like, sure, we can live in the world maybe one day that's like that, but the way you were describing this process of understanding every part to it, the requirements gathering and all that, and the best part about this is that you've abstracted all of it into Resactly. That's the whole point of this whole breakdown, everything you're saying, that like all the work that you went through to be able to pinpoint all these factors. Yeah, it may have started with 4 variables to begin with at the end, but nowadays, like as the models grow and it gets more precise and it gets to learn more and everything, it's hard to find people that are able to explain this. And the way you're explaining it, like even for me that I don't do MLAI today, I could digest that in the way of, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense at the atmosphere. If I don't like this, it should matter on the output. The output should take into consideration of it. And that's kind of how I understood so much of why you built this, how you built this, and why people should check it out, if anything. The part to it, before I go super deep into more deep into this, is the name itself. Everybody, you're a founder, of course, at the end of the day, like particularly anything that came out, the domain was free, question mark? Like what's a lot of the reason behind the name?
Oh, I'm a terrible namer. I am not creative at all. That's just an acronym. Restaurants made exactly for you. Resactly. That's it.
That's a great explanation. That's like a stellar explanation, if anything, of why that's really cool. And oh my goodness. And of course, like we're talking about all this tech and everything, and you were saying that like even while you were doing all the software engineering job and everything, the food blogging, the food writing, the food everything was still like an ongoing thing, if anything. I was going to ask the question, how do you balance all that? Like, how do you juggle all of it in terms of doing that? Because I want to take a moment in the sense of, like, nowadays, of course, like, the focus on Resactly. Of course, you're building the tech, but at the same time, you have to run the operation, right? As a founder and as somebody who wears many different hats, you're already seeing, like, you've interacted many times with stakeholders that are in finance, business, accounting, digital marketing, and everything. So I want to take the chance to think about you certainly know how to build things. Like, I have zero doubt about that part. But my lesson to myself is building stuff sometimes is the easy part, right? Building the actual product is the easy part. How was your journey so far with that concept of building it is one piece, but the other piece of running operation and making it something more than just, hey, look, it's a software. What did that look like for Resactly so far?
Yeah, that's basically where building the platform was probably the easiest thing. I mean, you had some issues with Terraform or trying to start up Kubernetes clusters, but after figuring out autopilot and a couple of things, okay, that was easy, I'm good. So building the platform, that was easy. Operations and all these other things, like I am way out of my depth. I don't know what I am doing. That's where it's like you do a lot of deep research and it's like, okay, I think that will work. But these are all the things that actually cost a lot of money. Marketing costs a lot of money. Digital advertising costs a lot of money. Influencers cost a lot of money. If you don't know what you're doing, you're just throwing money and you're wasting it. When I first started out, I just thought, okay, put it up, put some Google ads on it. It'll drive people to the platform. They'll create accounts. Everything is great. And I did that for a little while. I was averaging about 10,000 visitors to the site a day. But those 10,000 visitors were not creating accounts. And I'm spending all of this money. I'm spending all of this money on the platform. I can see in Google Analytics I have the visitors, but I wasn't having click tracking and traceability to see where I was losing them. I found a couple of tools that I could install that would tell me they're doing this, they're clicking here, they're going here, and then they're losing interest. So I had to do a whole lot of re-implementation and rejiggering to capture interest and things like that. That worked. But still, that part was still on the technical side. I wasn't being able to I wasn't getting conversions. So that's where I said, okay, you know what? I need experts in this space. There's this app that I used to use. I still have it. I don't know if I'm actually going to sign up for a call again because I've had some bad experiences, some good advice, some good nuggets of advice, but more negative experiences than anything else. It's called Intro. So on intro, you have a lot of people experts in their field. You can pay to have phone calls with them, 15, 30. Now they have some people who actually have like, you can pay for subscriptions to have these conversations with them. And these are people that are like top of field. You have people from investment firms, top venture capital firms there. You have a lot of CEOs. You have a lot of people who are like CMOs and so on and so forth. So I scheduled my first call with a guy who is very well known in the food industry. I was actually surprised he was on the platform. Very well known in the food industry, was on Shark Tank. I pitched him Resactly. That was before it was actually built. But I pitched him that, and he was like, "Oh, I'll get you money," and that fell through. It never happened. So that was my initial, I'm not sure about this. But then I scheduled another call with someone who was the former CTO of, was it Intel? But one of those really large organizations that was in tech. And I was like, okay, I have a good product. Let me speak to another CTO to see where I am and what he thinks. And he was like, this is a fabulous idea. Like, I have a whole lot of eating issues, and this would be something that's perfect for me. I want to use it. He's like, yeah, I'm taking you on. I'm putting you on podcasts, and I'm going to advise you on this. And we had that whole communication. We had that relationship. We're still in communication, and he's the one that actually got me on the tip of doing podcasts. So great, I have that. And then I forget who I was speaking to, and that was like, okay, so what's your marketing strategy? I was like, I don't know what to do here. Marketing, I've been doing digital advertising. They were like, no, you actually need to hire a marketer who'll do that for you. And then I go online and I'm looking at I'm looking at the salaries of different marketing experts. And like, first there's a social media marketing, there is growth marketers. Like, I just need one person to figure out what this is. So there was an organization that came up on Instagram. Their ad came up on Instagram. They were called Marketer Hire. And they're the ones who kind of went through all of the different marketers. And they're just saying, okay, so tell us about you. You're looking for a marketer, why you're looking for a marketer, what do you want? Before you even have a conversation, they basically take you through a wizard and you explain all of these things. And at the end of it, they're like, okay, it seems like you need a growth marketer, and schedule a call and I will make this happen. I scheduled the call. Their price point is a lot, and I wasn't ready to spend that money, so I backed off. And I said, let me just keep on building a product for a bit. Kept on building it for about 6 months, saved some more money, and I'm like, okay, now I have money on this budget that they've given me. I have the money to pay for it. But then we're interviewing people. I went through, I don't know if it was 2 hires. Both of them were just, I couldn't even get one phone call out of them. And I was just like, this quality of marketer for the amount of money I'm about to pay. I don't have venture funding. This is my money. This is my savings. I'm not going to do this. But then I realized, I heard about TopTal. When I was looking for side gigs, I had heard about TopTal, but TopTal got flooded with talent when everybody went remote. So I had actually tried to go to TopTal, and they're like, okay, we're flooded. Try back in November. And then I was Googling and I saw TopTal marketing. I was like, oh, TopTal has marketing? I thought you only had engineers. So I was like, okay, I'm not going as to try to be a marketer. Let's hire. So go through, schedule a call, have a conversation. I think I had a conversation with just one guy, and I was just like, I'm floored. Like, he was the one that brought in influencer marketing to the idea. He was like, okay, so what we need to do is we just need to get an influencer to take the app. My day in the life using Resactly. Like, once he pitched me that, I was like, why didn't I think about that? That is so simple. And he just had so many ideas. Spitball. I was like, yeah, right there. And I was like, okay, yeah, you are hired. So we go 3 months back and forth doing strategies and all of that. And we have a full game plan. And I'm like, okay, so what are next steps? He's like, okay, we need to start hiring, and we have all of these strategies. And I'm like, okay, put a budget together. The number he gave me, I'm like, and that's initial numbers. I go back to Top 12, like, okay, there has to be a better number than this. Is there something I'm missing? And they're like, let's look this over. So I let them handle that. I'm thinking, okay, let's go back to intro. Because I'm at a point where I need to understand, I have a good idea on this digital. He's explained it well. I have a good idea. Let's go back to intro and schedule a call with somebody that's like the head of digital something, and just kind of like explain this to them and get their ideas of what to do. I didn't find that person. Instead, I spoke to the head of, Black Girls Code. She came onto the platform, and I was just like, oh, this is interesting. I would never have expected her to be on the platform. I'll just talk to her. Like, I know my monthly allowance for this was for the marketer, but I actually am curious to talk to her and just hear what she has to say. So it was a great conversation, and at the end of it, I was like, yeah, so right now I'm at the point where I need to figure out where I'm going to get money for this marketing budget, and these are my targets. She was like, based off of what you're saying, you probably don't need to do digital marketing right now. What you need is a growth marketer who's going to give you the strategy and set out like a Gantt chart and a timeline of when exactly you need to do these things. And so that way, instead of just saying upfront, $100,000 needed for all of this, it's like, okay, well, right now you need $5,000, and it's going to 10 influencers, and they're going to do that, and then you're going to get some money out of that, and you're going to use it to then route to other things. And I was like, oh. And she was like, yeah, what you need is like a growth strategist, growth marketer. I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I mean, well, actually I did, because it clicked back what Marketer Hire had said. And I was like, okay, great, thank you. So I go back to TopTal, and I explained to them the situation and what I need. They were like, oh, okay. Yes, we have somebody else different for you. And I just hired back in March. And for the last 3 months now, we've basically been doing a whole lot of market research, hitting the ground running, really getting a very clear idea of what it is that I need to do, what I'm bringing to the market, which all the research that they did already told me everything I already knew, but it was good to get that confirmation and that validation. You're doing the right thing. Your product does not exist on the market. You have you're bringing something that doesn't exist that's going to make a difference. So it was really good to have that. So now we're at the point where it's like, okay, we have the market research. We have the digital marketing strategy. We're about to discuss and have the Gantt chart. Okay, so we're going to start this process. We're gonna reach out to these specific people we're gonna partner with. We have that full layout. Point to point, coming back to everything you said on operations, I've really just laid out what I need, and I go one after the other, as opposed to saying, okay, business, legal, finance, all that, blah, blah, blah. No. What do I need right now? What I need right now is to get the product out there so I can get feet in the door. That's the focus. Finance, I don't need a CFO right now. I just have a really, really good spreadsheet that spans 5 years. So I know when I'm always like, oh, I spent $100 less here. Great. That's actually giving me $1,000 by the end of the year that I can put towards something else. So that's great. That's what I need from a finance perspective. As I mentioned, the marketing, I have that handled. Legal, right now, the only thing I need is privacy policy. We're good over there. So it's just like having an understanding of what I need right now. I mean, obviously there's the big goal of the big company and having the departments and all the hires and all of that. If I actually even want that, that's a whole other story I'm contemplating. But obviously there are those things that you will need eventually. But for right now, I don't need it. So I'm perfectly fine just running my company on my own with what I need.
I behind, I know it's audio, I keep on saying it, behind the scene, I've been jumping out of my seat every time you mention something like that, just because that was a masterclass on being a founder. That was a masterclass on spending money to make money. That was a masterclass on understanding that you do not need to tackle the big problem immediately. You break it down into smaller parts, and figuring out the next step, as opposed to figuring out, oh, let's solve 100 steps at a single, let's take one big step at a time. That's not how it is. So that's why I keep on saying that I'm absolutely, you say you're floored by all these concepts that marketers show you, but I'm just floored right now of everything that you shared, because you have to go through it to be able to say all of this. So I don't care if nobody's championing for you. I am championing for you, because everything that you've just shared so far has been thrilling. I keep on saying it's thrilling to hear this, because people want to try stuff, right? And the fact that you're able to share it to people, I keep on saying that is way more valuable than anything. And one thing that I actually do like, when you were talking about being resourceful, I feel like, I don't think you've personally said it the word yourself, but everything that you try describes a resourceful person. And if you're not that person, then I don't think you're supposed to be doing all of this. But everything that you've said so far, it just comes back to that you don't have to know everything, but you have to reach out and try different directions to do it. Which is why when we were coming to this part of talking about Resactly, we've talked about the tech, we talked about the operations behind it. Boy, did we talk about that. This really fun part of understanding how you could impact the user on both ends, the retail side and the business side, right? When we're talking about the retail user, is the app. Anybody could download it. If anything, go download it. If anything, go visit the website itself. The other aspects that you're talking about that is super, super exciting, at least like, because you've worked definitely in the corporate world, I've worked in the corporate world and everything. When we cater a product to enable businesses to do even more, Resactly is in that path, I believe, right? To help, I guess, like, what is it, expound feature? Expound this connection, these APIs? Like, talk to me about that part of, yes, we talk about retail users, but we also talk about this business side that is super unsexy and sexy at the same time. But I want to hear more about maybe what's upcoming, if anything, or what is that approach for Resactly?
I mean, definitely. Look, I'm a nerd. Everything that works is sexy to me. So bringing data into stuff like, oh, that's cool. So so pretty much what Resactly is trying to do from the restaurant side is to bring technology into the kitchen. We're trying to take the food industry, which still operates very much on gut feel and on personal preference. I don't know if that's the right thing to use. Trying to take that subjectivity, ultimately, that's all it is, gut feel and subjectivity. Trying to take that and make it better, that bringing in data and technology, to take gut feel and subjectivity and make it smarter. When you have more information, when you have more data, when you have more technology counterparts, it always makes for a difference. Generally better. Hopefully we're not going to go the route of Facebook better, but generally better. I say that not because Facebook and Instagram aren't great, but where they started is definitely not where they are right now. There are too many legal issues that are going with that. But hopefully it's food. Well, how much bad can I cause? But pretty much, we're just trying to make that better. So think about it right now. When a person says that they want to open up a restaurant, they're like, oh, I want to do this cuisine. Oh, I have all of these ideas about the dishes. But what happens if they put that restaurant in the wrong location? People will drive location on, foot traffic. How about you drive location by the dietary preferences of the people who live in that location? How about you drive location by whether it's a food desert? How about you drive location by the competition that already exists? That kind of information, that kind of data that's readily available on a platform for a person to just look at and say, oh, thinking about all of these things, there's this pie chart and there's this part that says there's only 1%, this particular area, what I'm trying to do, well, there's only 1% competition in this area, that's probably where I should be building. Because I'm going to get the most bang for my buck. I'm going to make the most money serving the most people who actually want what I want to bring. That does not exist right now. So providing something as simple as that. And then further still to that, like, what about competitive analysis? Let's say you have a cheese pizza, and within a 5-mile radius, everybody has a cheese pizza. You're charging $30, everybody else is charging $15. You either need to come up with a very compelling reason as to why you're charging $30 for a cheese pizza, or you need to bring your price down to be competitive. Providing that kind of information is also something that does not exist currently. So providing these kind of tools, that's just 2 features I mentioned. There are a whole lot more that are currently being built out. Providing these kind of tools to restaurants that don't exist, my hope is that by being able to make smarter decisions with this kind of information, with these kind of tools, we can drive that restaurant closure rate down. Restaurant closure rate currently sits at 30% in the first year, 60% over 3 years. 30% is operating off of gut feel. What happens when we take gut feel and tie it with raw data? My hope is that brings that number down. So that's ultimately what I'm doing in the unsexy part of things.
I'm so absorbed in the sense of like when you're talking about the potential, bringing data. I know data is not a sexy word, but putting it into practice. This is the whole point where it's like you're giving great examples of price, competition, everything. Like which location, it definitely matters at the end of the day. And you're saying 30% first year and then 3 years is 60%. I've read that number somewhere as well recently, and I was like, I know just maybe people from New York, they're more fascinated by this food restaurant scene because you could literally eat at a different restaurant every night and you can still keep on going for years and years and years going. I think that's probably the obsession about that. So that is incredible. And I guess I want to come back to Fisayo for just a second, if anything, is what software do you use or do you live by or do you need in your day to day? I like asking this question, like whether it's like top 3 apps on your phone or like top 3 any apps that is on your computer or whatever. Like me from my end, I don't really say like apps. I say Command D is my favorite. If people do any coding, like Command D is a very fun feature, if anything, on that. But for Fisayo, if anything, you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, you're a techie person. Like what helps you, what apps, what technology helps you run your day nowadays?
Well, email, for sure. I cannot survive without email. I'm checking it every second. Email, ding, email. People think it's funny. They're like, what's your phone number? I'm like, I don't look at my phone. I have like 10,000 text messages I haven't read. My email, I'll respond in 5 seconds. So that's email. Obviously as a coder, IntelliJ. IntelliJ is my go-to. I don't go a day without looking at my IntelliJ. And then, I mean, music, I guess. I'm not the most exciting person when it comes to tech. I need my music. I have the same music I've had on my iPhone for years now. I have Apple Music, but I don't really listen to it because honestly right now it's just I listen to music for 5 minutes to zone out, and then once I zone out, I don't even hear it anymore. I'm just coding. That's pretty much what it's for.
I love that. As I came out saying that, like, it doesn't matter what tools you're given, it's just how you use it at the end of the day, and you really do understand that part of, having so much experience. Even for me, like, keep it simple. Keep everything simple at the end. And shout out to IntelliJ, shout out to JetBrains, shout out to WebStorm, shout out to PHP Storm. Shout out to that group at the end of the day. I've definitely been fortunate to use some of their products, and I keep on saying that it's hella reliable at the end of the day.
IntelliJ is driving me nuts with Sonoma. It's fun.
Wait till we have the Vim people come in, and wait till we have like the all the other even the Sublime people come in, if anything. But that is so fun. The Emacs people. I cannot let you go without talking real quickly about restaurants, New York restaurants specifically. You've written so much about it. You've done that. My question is, how in the world did you get in Tatiana? Well, I mean, to be fair, I feel like we're still going to talk about it already, but this is something that I want to call out is Tatiana is a very hot restaurant right now in New York City, and trying to eat there is nearly impossible. So if anything, if you got any tricks for us, that is, whether it's a techie trick or even a non-techie trick, is what was the thing? On your blog, people should check it out, of course, nycfoodieadventures.com. There's a great article on Tatiana. So what was the story behind that one? Just because you clearly hear that I'm obsessed with not having tried that place yet.
Well, so for me, it's like I always keep my ear to the ground. So the minute I heard about Tatiana, I was already like, 5 days left, 4 days left, 3 days left, 2 days left, and then I beeline there 5 p.m. on day one when they're opening with no reservation. Hi, you seat by the bar, because that's basically what I'm known for. What I'm known for in the writing. When I first started out 6 years ago, it was all about fine dining tasting menus. But at a point in time, I don't want to say I got over it. There's still special dining experiences. They're just not dining experiences for going and writing about every day. I kind of switched focus from writing about the high end to writing about the new, younger restaurants that are just opening that I felt like they are going to be awarded. They're going to be hard to get into. And 10 for 10, every restaurant I've written about that's new and young has gotten awarded. So good on me. My taste buds work. But that's basically what it was. I had my ear on the ground. Plus, I also know Kwame. I've been stalking his career since when he started out in DC. So once I saw that it's Tatiana, it's him, it's a new young restaurant, even before eating the food, I'm like, this is a win. This is definitely going to go. And once I got there and I had it, I was like, yeah, absolutely.
No, I keep on saying that, like, no matter how techy we're at the end of the day, we have time to think about this stuff. We have time to think about enjoying all of it. And, hey, maybe one day I'll get my seat at Tatiana one day. But thanks for sharing so much of that. But closing out, I feel like this is probably something that you've answered a million times already, just on this show, is advices for people jumping into this. I think this is the hard part where I'm going to speak as an engineer is every day there's a moment to be like, I'm going to found this. I do have a company on the side that I build a lot of fun thing and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But the commitment, the level of trust that you have in yourself, we could hear it. We could hear that absolute, like, belief, confidence, and even the attempts and all that kind of stuff. I absolutely love it on that front. So for everybody in that position out there, whether you're just starting to be an entrepreneur or you've been an entrepreneur for a while or even thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, like, what general, I guess, northern light that you personally believe in on top of everything that you shared so far, but maybe just as a closing good thought from Fisayo of, yeah, northern, you know, a North Star, if anything, that you follow.
Well, I think 2 pieces of advice. One, even though this is unpopular, people say that you shouldn't do things you're passionate about because passion doesn't necessarily equate to money. I actually go the other way. Do what you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to stick by it and you waste your money. So that's one. 2, know everything there is to know about your product. From building it, from running the organization, know everything. If not, people will take advantage of you. Like, I just let go of I hired in January when I was trying to refocus on the operations part. It said, let me hand off building to a vendor company that I hired out in India. And I just let all of them go maybe like last week. Because I finally was getting my hands back into actually reviewing the code. I had a little breathing time to go back and look at it. And I saw that, wow, this is absolutely horrid. Everything they've done for the last 6 months that I've been paying them for, I have to rewrite again. But no, if I wasn't a coder, if I wasn't an engineer, and I had just offloaded everything over to them, not knowing what they've done, I'd be completely screwed right now. But because I knew everything about my product, because I've done a lot of research, even on the digital marketing, even on the growth, as I have these people hired, because I've done that, I feel confident knowing, okay, I'm shelling out money to these people to do this part, but I know exactly what it is they're supposed to be doing, and they're doing it right. So nobody's taking advantage of me there. Right? So know every single thing there is to know about running your company. You might not have the deep knowledge that somebody with 20 years of experience has, but so long as you have an understanding that's more than a surface, oh, I read one blog post on Google, so long as you have a little bit more than that, you're able to ask the real questions, the educated questions. And provided you're listening and you understand and you have the next question to ask, you'll feel comfortable saying, okay, this person isn't taking advantage of me. Here is your salary. Versus, hey, I just hired somebody, they're going to do their job. Yeah, don't do that. So know every aspect of it. Not necessarily you're going to do everything, but know everything.
those are some cold, hard advice that is so useful. So useful. So thank you so much on those one. Where can people find Fisayo? Where can people find Resactly other than Resactly.com? But of course, like, where can people find you and everything that you're working on today?
Well, as far as Resactly is concerned, I was supposed to be in the App Store 3 months ago, but I just mentioned that entire vendor company. Yeah, that's why that's not happening right now. But I have the Resactly.com is available on the website. The full rewrite to be finally an app and in the App Store, currently targeting 6 weeks from now. So a lot of manic coding has been happening on my end to fix stuff. But 6 weeks from now, I should be available in the app stores for the public, and then for the restaurants following very closely behind that. So that should also be available for them to use both as an app as well as online on the web. As far as finding me, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can contact me on the website. I read all of the messages. Whether you're doing Resactly or you're doing my company OKAO, you can send me messages on LinkedIn. I read everything and I respond to everything. And yeah, that's how you can reach me. I would say you can find me at a bar and a restaurant, but I'm tired. I haven't been going to the bars lately, so.
Hey, you'll be there when you celebrate everything. But of course, all the links will be shared down below, so please go check them out. I think no matter what, with all these lessons and everything about the foodie, if you're a foodie, if you're a restaurateur, if you're anything, if you're somebody that's just passionate, what is it? As you were saying, August 2024 coming in with so many hot stuff over there as in terms of like the rewrite of the app, the availability of like even checking data if you're into that kind of stuff. That's always like the fun part to think about it. But on behalf of myself and on behalf of everybody that enjoys a good story and cold hard lessons on being an entrepreneur, I just want to say thank you again so much for being on the show, because I personally had a great time hearing everything that you shared today.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation. Hurt my head a little bit going that far down memory lane, but okay.
Hey, for the benefit of everyone. So either way, thank you so much again, and for the rest of you all, I will definitely catch you on the next one. See ya. And that was Fisayo Oluwadiya, founder of OKAO and creator of Resactly. All the links are shared in the description notes below. Go check them out. If you would like to be on Podcast Room by Software Engineer, reach out to us. Just email contact@perrytiu.com. Can't wait to have you on the show. Once again, thank you so much for listening to Podcast Room by Software Engineer. Don't forget to hit the follow button on your podcast app and leave us a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's completely free. And if you want to tell your friends about Podcast Room by Software Engineer, that's totally cool as well. Anyways, I am Perry Tiu, and I'll catch you on the next one. Big love.